The theater lights dimmed, and a low hum filled the air as thousands of people waited for the next contestant. It was season 20 of America's Got Talent, and anticipation was already high after a string of impressive acts. But none of them knew what was about to happen when a quiet Filipino man stepped into the spotlight, a man who would soon make Simon Cowell's jaw drop and turn the entire studio silent. His name was Marco Dela Cruz, a 27-year-old singer from Cebu, Philippines. He wasn't dressed like a typical performer, no glittering outfit, no loud confidence. Just a plain white shirt, blue jeans, and a small silver cross that hung from his neck. Yet, there was something about his eyes, a deep calm, a spark of old soul, that hinted he carried more than just a dream. "Hello," Simon said, peering curiously over his notepad. "What's your name, and where are you from?" Marco smiled nervously. "Good evening, Sir Simon. My name's Marco, and I'm from the Philippines." The crowd clapped, a few whistles echoed from the Filipino audience scattered through the seats. Marco bowed slightly, humble as ever. "What brings you here today, Marco?" asked Sofia Vergara, smiling warmly. Marco took a breath. "I came here to sing. Music it's my way of keeping my father's memory alive." The words hung in the air for a moment. The camera zoomed in on Simon's face. He leaned slightly forward. "Your father?" Simon asked. "Yes, sir," Marco replied softly. "He loved Elvis Presley. Every Sunday, he'd play those old records, Can't Help Falling in Love, Suspicious Minds, in the ghetto. When he passed away, I promised him I'd sing Elvis on a big stage one day." A murmur rippled through the audience, that kind of soft emotional wave that happens when a story starts to touch hearts. Simon nodded, thoughtful. "That's quite a promise," he said. "So, what are you going to sing for us tonight?" Marco's eyes glimmered. "I'll be singing Elvis Presley's, If I Can Dream." The crowd gasped. Even Howie Mandel raised his eyebrows. It was a powerful song, one not many dared to attempt. It wasn't just a song, it was a message. A cry for hope, for unity, written during one of Elvis's most emotional performances in 1968. It required not only voice, but soul. Simon leaned back, arms crossed. "That's a big one," he said. "All right, let's hear it." The stage lights dimmed further. Smoke rolled gently across the floor as the music began, soft strings, the sound of nostalgia itself. Marco closed his eyes for a brief moment, as though whispering a prayer. Then, he began to sing. There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. The first note was pure velvet. It wasn't loud, it was restrained, intimate, but the tone was golden. Every vowel carried emotion, every word sounded lived. The crowd quieted, even the backstage crew froze mid-step. "Got to be birds flying higher in a sky more blue." Sophia clasped her hands over her chest. Heidi leaned forward, and Simon, the man known for his critical gaze, stared, unblinking. His pen fell silently onto the desk. As the second verse came, Marco's voice grew stronger, fuller, not an imitation of Elvis, but an echo of his spirit. The Filipino's accent melted into the melody, his phrasing was perfect. He didn't sing to impress, he sang to speak. "If I can dream of a better land, where all my brothers walk hand in hand." And just then, a screen behind him lit up with a soft projection, vintage clips of Elvis, civil rights marches, and smiling children from all around the world. The visuals blended with his performance, like destiny itself had prepared this moment. The audience rose to their feet halfway through, clapping and cheering, but Marco didn't notice. His eyes were closed, his voice trembled, with sincerity as he hit the bridge, the part where even professional singers falter. "There must be peace and understanding sometime." He lifted his hand slightly, as if reaching out to heaven. A single tear rolled down his cheek, illuminated by the spotlight. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but raw, human emotion. Strong winds of promise that will blow away the doubt and fear. The power in his delivery surged like thunder. The camera caught Simon's mouth slowly opening in disbelief. He looked at the other judges, shaking his head, muttering something under his breath that the microphones barely caught. Unbelievable. When Marco reached the final chorus, the entire studio was on its feet. Flags of the Philippines waved from the balcony. Even backstage contestants were in tears. "If I can dream, please let my dream come true, right now." The note hung in the air for a full 3 seconds. Then silence. No one moved. For a brief moment, the whole arena seemed suspended in time, as though even the walls themselves were listening. Then, suddenly, an eruption. The audience roared, people screamed, clapped, cried. Marco bowed deeply, overwhelmed. He pressed his palms together, whispering, thank you so much. Simon Cowell, usually the first to speak, remained silent. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, his face a mix of awe and reflection. Finally, he spoke, voice quieter than usual. Marco, I've been doing this show for over 20 years. And I've heard a lot of Elvis covers. But that, he pointed to Marco, pausing. That wasn't a cover. That was a resurrection. The audience screamed again. Simon continued, his voice trembling slightly. You didn't just sing Elvis, you channeled him. You made every word feel like it mattered again. I mean, honestly, I was ready to roll my eyes when you said, Elvis, but then you opened your mouth and, he shook his head. My jaw literally dropped. Marco smiled shyly, wiping tears from his eyes. Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make my dad proud. Simon nodded, still emotional. Well, wherever he is, I'm pretty sure he's incredibly proud right now. Sophia clapped her hands together. That was beautiful, Marco. You have this amazing calmness when you sing, but your voice, it's so powerful. I felt every lyric. Heidi added, it was cinematic, emotional, goosebumps from start to finish. You didn't just sing, you told a story. Howie leaned toward his microphone. Marco, I think we just witnessed something timeless. You didn't need lights, dancers, or gimmicks, just your voice, your soul, and Elvis's message. That's what real talent is. Then Simon looked toward the golden buzzer. The audience sensed it, chants began echoing. Golden buzzer. Golden buzzer. Simon glanced at his fellow judges, they smiled knowingly. He turned back to Marco. You know, Simon said, Elvis once said, truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away. What you just did, that was truth. He reached out his hand and slammed the golden buzzer. A burst of golden confetti exploded from the ceiling, showering Marco as he covered his face in disbelief. The crowd erupted again, louder, wilder, tears and cheers blending together. Marco dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. The music swelled. Elvis's If I Can Dream played softly in the background. Simon walked up on stage, shaking his head in awe. You're incredible, he said. That was the best Elvis performance I've ever heard on this stage. Thank you, Mr. Simon, Marco said through tears. I still can't believe this. Simon smiled. Believe it, you earned it. Later that night, as Marco sat backstage wrapped in a blanket of confetti, a producer approached him. You just broke the internet, she said, showing him her phone. The video of his performance had already hit 2 million views in less than an hour. Comments flooded social media. He brought Elvis back to life. This Filipino singer just made Simon cry. Pure soul. No auto-tune, no ego, just music. Marco couldn't stop smiling. For a boy who once sang in the streets of Cebu for coins, this was beyond a dream. He thought of his father, of those humid nights when they sat by a flickering radio, singing along to Love Me Tender. The memories washed over him like warm sunlight. The next episode, semifinals. Weeks later, Marco returned to the AGT stage for the semifinals. This time, he chose another Elvis song, Can't Help Falling in Love. But he arranged it differently, stripped down, just piano and strings. As the music started, the audience went silent again. Marco sang with the tenderness of someone who had lived every word. Wise men say, only fools rush in. Couples in the audience held hands. Some cried quietly. The camera cut to Simon, who smiled softly, eyes gleaming with pride. By the time Marco finished, there was no need for words. Simon stood up first, giving a slow, respectful standing ovation. You've got something that money can't buy, he said afterward. It's sincerity. You don't perform for fame. You sing because it's who you are. And that's why we all believe you. The finals. It was the night of the grand finale. Thousands filled the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles. Millions more watched around the world, especially in the Philippines, where entire barangays gathered around televisions to cheer for Marco. Before stepping on stage, Marco whispered a quiet prayer. Papa, this is for you. He chose Unchained Melody, a song Elvis had famously performed live. The orchestra played softly as Marco appeared in the spotlight, his silver cross gleaming once again. When he began to sing, time stood still. His voice soared, delicate yet powerful, and every lyric felt like a message from heaven. Oh, my love, My darling, I've hungered for your touch. Tears filled the judge's eyes. The crowd swayed gently, phones raised, flashlights glowing like stars. It was as if the entire world sang with him. When he finished, Simon stood, visibly moved. Marco, he said quietly, there are moments in this show that define why it exists. Tonight, you reminded everyone that talent doesn't come from fame or money. It comes from the soul. The crowd roared again, Marco, Marco, Marco. He didn't win the season, but that didn't matter. Overnight, he became an international sensation. He was invited to perform on talk shows, at concerts, and even in Graceland, where Elvis's estate honored him for keeping the king's legacy alive. When asked what his secret was, Marco simply said, I don't sing to be famous. I sing to make people feel loved. Months later, Marco returned to the Philippines. His hometown of Cebu held a parade in his honor. Children waved tiny flags, and a huge banner hung across the plaza. Welcome home, Marco, our pride, our voice. He visited his father's grave that evening, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. The sun dipped low, casting a golden hue across the quiet cemetery. Marco knelt, placing the bouquet gently on the stone. Papa, he whispered, I did it. I sang Elvis on the biggest stage in the world, and they listened. A soft wind rustled the trees. In that moment, Marco swore he could almost hear his father's laughter, faint, familiar, warm, blending with the distant echo of an old Elvis tune. He closed his eyes, smiling through tears. Years later, Marco's performance of If I Can Dream remained one of the most watched videos in America's Got Talent history, over 500 million views worldwide. Music teachers studied it as an example of emotional authenticity. Fans around the globe sent him letters, thanking him for rekindling their love for Elvis, and for music itself. But for Marco, fame was never the prize. Every time he walked onto a stage, he carried that same humility, that same heart. Because he knew, music wasn't about showing off. It was about showing soul. And somewhere, in the invisible space between melody and memory, Elvis's timeless voice seemed to whisper back. Thank you very much.